I've been asked quite a few times, what makes me the expert on China? And the answer is, I'm not. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of Jerry's Take on China, and I'm Jerry. I am better informed on China than many people because I live here, but that doesn't make me an expert by any stretch of the imagination. However, there are a few things that give me a different perspective, and because of those perspectives, I often run up against people who claim to be experts, but somehow are completely wrong about China. It still doesn't make me more of an expert than them. They may have some specific expertise in their field, but are asked to comment on situations that aren't in their field. For example, it's no good asking an international economist based in New York with a focus on China's stock market how China will do on reopening after COVID, because they won't understand the street level activities going on. They've probably heard of dual circulation, but have no idea who it affects or how it affects people living in places like Guizhou, for example. Some people claim to have the required expertise to make their living writing, talking, and advising others about China. Some of them don't really have that right. They're abusing the trust that people place in them. I don't claim that right at all and never intended to become anything of a spokesperson on China. I found myself in that role because I see things differently to these so-called experts, and I often find myself calling them out on their misplaced knowledge or their misinterpreted evaluations on what's happening in China. I joined Twitter because I had some free time and because I thought people might be interested in my experiences. 2 years later, I joined YouTube because many people were telling me they like my articles, but their friends won't read them. They're only interested in watching. So I started making my articles into videos. And now I make videos and the articles are the scripts. I do read them. I'm reading now. But no one writes them for me. I write everything for myself. I have lots of photos of different parts of China. I've been through and spent time in places most people haven't even heard about. Or if they have, it's because Western media writes negatively about them, such as Xinjiang. I knew most of the news reports were wrong, but I never expected to be one of those people that someone could turn to for the correct view. Now, with 80,000 Twitter followers and approaching 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, it's clear people do turn to me. And most of them, if my feedback is to be believed, understand that I'm not going to lie, I don't misinform or try to fool anyone into believing anything but my own version of the truth. But how do I get that version of the truth? What are the things that make me view China so differently to the so-called experts? There are 4 factors. My time here in China is a long time. My traveling here has been extensive. My postgraduate education focused on China, and my wife is Chinese. I've lived here 18 years, and for sure I've seen some changes. When I arrived, Zhongshan, the city I live in, had 1 university. It now has 4, and 2 vocational colleges. It had no major freeways running through it. Now it has 2, both of which have improved from being suburban roads into multi-lane freeways. The local ferry port to Hong Kong, when I first saw it, wasn't much more than a tin shed by the river. It's now a modern advanced terminal. Average income was less than 1,000 RMB a month, and it's now over 5,000. Yet the price of a bottle of beer has risen from 3.5 when I arrived to just 5 RMB now. Coffee was unavailable when I arrived here. There are now dozens of Starbucks, Pacific coffee shops, other international brands. There's even a Tim Hortons and a couple of Walmart stores nearby if anybody wants to use them. I laughed when I was told there would be a high-speed train linking Zhongshan, a small city, to every major city in China. But sure enough, it's happened. And it happened when they said it would happen. Also, when those same students told me I'd be able to travel to Hong Kong by bridge, I got the map out to show them the impossibility of their claim. Now, I've traveled several times from Hong Kong airport to my home entirely by freeway across one of the world's longest bridges. My 18 years here have seen massive improvements in health, wealth, education, and lifestyle for my Chinese friends. Say what you like about communism. You can hate China all you like, but until you've seen how everyone is better off than they once were, you'll never realize how well the Chinese government has managed the economy and the infrastructure for the benefit of so many people, and why so many people are satisfied with China and their lives here. Travel helps broaden the mind, and I do a lot of it in China. There are still 4 provinces I haven't been to: Tibet, Yunnan, Qinghai, and Shanxi. I've been to every other province, and much of it by bike. Traveling by slow train is great. People always want to talk with you. Traveling by fast train isn't. It's more like a plane. You get on, you mind your own business, and then you get off. You hardly ever have a discussion with your fellow passengers. But I don't always travel by train or plane. I cycle. And this is how I've learned so much about the country. This is how we meet ordinary people. I've stayed in 30 RMB a night hotel rooms. I've stayed in 1,000 RMB a night hotel rooms too. I've camped under the stars, and I've eaten in the street. I've calculated recently that I travel more than 35,000 kilometers by bike in China. And to be honest, that's probably more than I've traveled by car in this country. I had a dream to ride to Tibet. That wasn't possible, so I rode to Xinjiang instead, crossing the country from the border of Macau in the east to the border of Kazakhstan in the west over a 2-month period in 2014. I wasn't happy with the fact I felt it was an unfinished journey. So in 2019, my wife and I flew back and we rode back to Guangdong together. We crossed deserts, mountain ranges, 3 major rivers, the Yellow River, Yangtze, and the Pearl Rivers. In order to do it, each of these journeys was just a few kilometers short of 5,000. In 2018, I was working in Harbin, the most northerly capital city, and I decided instead of flying home after my contract, I'd ride a bike back. That journey took me across the Bohai Sea on a ferry and in a straight 4,000-kilometer line, just a few hundred kilometers inland of the East Coast. If you really want to know more and learn more about China, there isn't a better way than interacting with street vendors on the road, meeting small business owners in tiny restaurants and bingguan, small Chinese guest houses. When we do this, there's no luxury hotels. They don't want dirty cyclists coming in wet and muddy from the road. But the cheap side alley guest houses welcome us. They feed us. They're interested in talking with us about what we're doing. And this is how I've learned a lot about China and its people. By getting off the main roads, meeting rural farmers, shepherds, workers, ordinary people, the real Chinese people, some of whom have never even seen a foreigner in the flesh before. They say education widens the horizons, and I couldn't agree more. As a young man, I didn't go to university. I worked in a shop and a factory before I was old enough to join the police. I learned a lot about law. I learned a bit about psychology, plenty about criminology, and lots about myself. But when I was 28, I left the police and I went into business in Australia. I got my first ever university certificate a few months later in business management. Now I have a diploma in business management and an associate diploma in marketing. I have certificates in teaching, training, train the trainer, many other subjects, but I never got a bachelor's degree. When I came to China, I realized this was an impediment. Many foreigners at that time came to China without proper qualifications. And when China started to insist that they could only work here if they were qualified, many of them left. And now some of them make a living on YouTube denigrating China. Because after many years of them cheating the system, China decided to impose the same rules their own countries would impose on any person wherever they come from. Imagine a Chinese person being allowed to teach in the US or Australia just because they were born in China but never finished school. That's how it was here for a long time. When it changed, those highly paid but relatively uneducated backpackers found themselves unemployed and unemployable. Social media was their solution. I didn't do that. This was clearly signposted that it was going to happen, and I knew I needed to address my shortcomings, so I found a university that would get me a master's degree. I wanted a real one, not one I could buy off the shelf. It took me a year to find the right one and raise the £20,000 needed. After 2 years of studying cross-cultural change management, I finished a dissertation related to Chinese workplace psychology in a Western managed business environment. And then my career changed to become something of a business consultant, advising foreign-owned corporations in China how to do better business with Chinese employees, and some Chinese businesses how to better do business with Western managers and Western customers. And this taught me a lot about China. My living experiences, all my traveling, and every interaction I have with Chinese people now benefits from the information I learned about Chinese psychology, Chinese culture, and China's national identity during these 2 years of postgraduate study. Finally, I married the most patient and diplomatic teacher. She speaks English as well as I do and has taught me enough Mandarin and Cantonese to get by. I don't claim to be fluent in Chinese, I'm definitely not. But imagine a guy getting on a bike and riding the length of the country without being able to speak a word of the language? That would be gross stupidity. So my language skills are okay, I can get by. I can engage in conversations, I can order food, I can get directions, but it's great when my wife is with me and we can have in-depth conversations. I ask and I answer questions in a country shop at the side of a country road, and this is where I learn more about China than any book, any teacher, or any so-called expert can tell me. My wife's a qualified traditional medicine therapist and therefore is knowledgeable about what foods are good, what medicines we need. She can offer massage, acupuncture, moxibustion, many other treatments. But most of all, she can guide my philosophy and help me when I'm wrong about China to understand what is right. These are the factors that make me see China differently to these so-called experts. It's a combination. My time here, my experience gained from traveling, my knowledge built from studying, and the wisdom passed to me by my wife. There's one more point I'd like to add. When I write a script for a video, I make sure I have all the facts and figures supported. I will openly and freely admit that I'm biased towards China. Who wouldn't be when they understand properly what China has done? But I'll always support my statements with links. They may be media, they may be academic, they may be government, but they will always be supported. I don't make stuff up to make China look good. I research my facts to support why China actually is good, and then I'll tell the people who are prepared to listen. I hope that helps people understand what I say isn't just bland opinion. My views aren't rose-tinted views, and my opinions aren't paid for. If they happen, as some people suggest, to parrot the CCP, that's probably because the CPC, as they're properly called, have told you the truth, and all I'm doing is reinforcing it. In the next video, I'll challenge some of the misunderstandings and the predictions made by these so-called experts. For now, thank you for watching Jerry's Take on China and how it is that I form my takes. I'll see you next time.